I didn't know. I didn't know our court system was unfair. I know. I went to court. I went to court about my mental health, quote unquote mental health. And I know you're not allowed to take pictures in a courtroom. And I know you're not allowed to take pictures in a courthouse. And I know you're not allowed to bring in a gun unless you're a policeman. And you're allowed to bring in a cell phone if you're a lawyer. If you're a lawyer or a judge, you're allowed to bring in a cell phone. So you have rules for certain people, and for other people, they're different. No cell phone unless you're a lawyer. No gun unless you're a policeman or a policewoman. No knives, no anything like that. When I went to court on a mental illness charge, I was chained hand and foot. And I think it was what it was, mental illness charge. And I've seen people on YouTube that have been convicted, and they go to court and they're not chained they don't have handcuffs on, they don't have leg cuffs on, but I did. And I started looking this stuff up, and I was told by my lawyer when I went to court, I was told, well, you don't have the right to assert your Fifth Amendment rights. You don't have to talk to police. You don't have to talk to mental health staff. But you have to answer every question the judge asks you. And there was no jury, of course. There was no jury. There were about 10 people that were against me when I went to mental health court this year in 2024. And I had my defense lawyer who really just kind of laid down and took it. Not to be vulgar or profane. I had to answer every question the judge asked me. I was told I didn't have my Fifth Amendment rights. So I have to explain myself. And as a Christian, I'm going to tell the truth, especially in court. So I had to answer every question the judge asked me. And this was recorded. And people spoke lies. And the judge never asked, is that the truth? He just accepted that was the truth. They went off a police report from 2011. And there were lies in the police reporters. There were lies somewhere along the way. And they reported that to the judge, the lies. And I looked up some information. If a judge asks you a question in court, you have to answer it. And as a Christian, you have to answer it truthfully. Most people will lie, but in court, if a judge asks you a question, you have to answer it truthfully. So I started researching this because I just went to court for mental illness. I started researching this stuff. And I found out if a girl or a woman says to a man, I mean, it would probably be different if it was a girl and a woman, or if it was a girl, if it was a boy or a man and a woman, and the man was saying this woman or this girl raped me. I think it'd be completely different. But one witness, if somebody says you raped her, one witness is all that's required for conviction. And there was a black man who was just released. He got, I don't know how many years, it was like 50 years or 60 years conviction for raping a white woman in the 70s. He just got released. There was a woman who was convicted of murder. And she went to jail, and then they convicted her of another murder while she was in jail. And the judge let her out. A murderer let her out. Convicted 2 murders, and on the second murder they let her out. If she only convicted one murder, she would have been in jail today. But because she convicted, because she convicted two murders, she was let out. The black man that was in jail, claimed his innocence, and he could have been guilty. But I mean, 50 years in prison for one rape? Isn't that excessive? And he can get money from the government for all these years he's been in rape, all these years he's been in jail, convicted supposedly unjustly. And he was going to the court for more money. But it's something like $100,000 for every, or like $10,000 for every year, or something like that. You're in jail, unjustly. He was in jail for over 40 years. So this was about 1977 to like 1920 to like 2022. He was in jail. How do you readjust to society and all the changes that have happened if you get out of jail? So I mean, I don't know what happened with that case, but I heard there was a man convicted of murder. He was spent 30 years in jail. He spent 30 days in jail. I've been in jail longer than that. I haven't murdered anybody. They accused me of stealing, and then they were going to let me out, and I just stayed there because I saw in the Bible, Paul said, "No, let themselves come or escort us out." He said, we were beaten and imprisoned without a trial, Roman citizens. And apparently Rome was more just than the United States. I'm talking about the United States. I'm from the United States. Some of you might be able to hear an accent, and you know that's not a Canadian accent. But I mean, one person. Let's say I was to accuse somebody of raping me, and I said I'm going to testify of somebody raping me. If it were a woman, nobody would believe me. Nobody would believe me. But if one woman testifies against a man, that testimony can lead to a conviction. If there are enough details, if there's enough crying on the stand, one witness can put a man away for life, apparently, or pretty much near it. 40 years, 30 years. I mean, for me, I'm in my 50s. If I got a conviction for 30 years in jail, eating that kind of food, how would I survive to even be free? And yet if someone were a murderer, and he was convicted for the rest of his life, we might spend the same amount of time in jail. I mean, it's astounding. One witness. I thought we went by the law. I thought we imitated the law of Moses, where two witnesses were required. I thought two witnesses were required for a conviction at least. And then I realized, well, not unless it's a police officer. And then I realized anybody can take someone to court as long as they swear or raise their right hand. They can convict anybody. And not anybody. They can't convict a judge. They can't convict a police officer most of the time. Qualified immunity. They can't convict FBI, qualified immunity. But I'm just realizing how unjust what we call our justice system is. And they have the god of justice, Libra or whatever, the goddess of justice, Libra, and they've got the woman blindfolded with the scales in her hands, whatever the god of justice would be. I'm thinking, we're pagan. God of justice. On our court buildings, we're pagan. Back in Roman times, there was a judge or a magistrate. It was a governor or something like that, or a judge. I think it was a governor, wrote to higher up and asked, this person is a Christian. What do I do with them? And they wrote back to him. He said, if he's a Christian, give him death. That's enough for the death penalty.